My name's Lou. I'm a senior project manager here at DPR. You guys are all out at the Poly campus, is that right? Yeah, so I actually built the Poly campus back in 07, 08, the really cool 3 sets of buildings with the big ass fans and the atriums and such there. That was my first project with ASU. Went on, built McCord Hall, the new Masters of Business Administration at the Tempe campus. And then now I'm just right now wrapping up the law school in downtown Phoenix. So I've done a lot of work for ASU. I'm an ASU grad. My son actually just graduated in May from the School of Engineering and Mechanical Engineering. So a lot of deep ASU roots. I have had a few U of A tours down here. That kind of hurts my heart a little bit, but you know, for the most part, it's been ASU. So welcome. I do a lot of these. One of the reasons we do that is because, you know, the building that you're sitting in now is really special. And we built it, as you'll see in a second, to kind of do exactly this. See how far we could take sustainability and then kind of get out and let people know about, you know, different tactics and different things and different lessons learned that we came up with. And so you guys are here. I want to give you a little slideshow on kind of the overall from start to finish, and then we'll actually go and walk in the building and take a look at all the cool stuff. So welcome. So we decided a while back that we really wanted to get a new office. So we'd been in Phoenix since '96, had a really good leased office over kind of in the Camelback corridor, which is kind of the cool part of town where you wanted to have an office. But we'd been there quite a while, and they were actually looking, you know, to raise the rents there, and they weren't really taking care of us all that great. And we figured, well, we've been in Arizona long enough. I think we're going to stay here, so it's time to build our own office. And so we started looking in 2010 to kind of come up with, you know, some ideas of where we wanted to move. And so you can kind of see our goals there. I mean, number one, we wanted to be centrally located here in town. And this is the best spot I think you could possibly be in as far as Phoenix. There's freeways all around, so really easy access. But the really cool thing is the light rail's a block away, and also the SkyTrain for the airport is there a block away. So, you know, we do a lot of traveling. You can park here, you know, walk a block, get on the SkyTrain. You know, people park here. I park here when I take a vacation. You don't have to pay the fees and all that. Perfect spot, really perfect spot in Phoenix for getting around and really, you know, being able to make access and with the work that we do, which is kind of all over the place. We wanted to be really sustainable and not do the typical Phoenix thing and tear some older building down and then build a new one on top. So to us, you know, sustainability is a lot more than just energy use. A lot of the stuff we'll be looking at today is energy related, but we really wanted to be able to reuse an existing building. So light rail's really helped out this corridor. It's really starting to gentrify a lot. You know, Van Buren back in the old days was a great street, then it really went down. And now with the light rail here on Washington, you're starting to see everything kind of getting nice again. So it's kind of starting from the east and working west. And so in 2010, you know, the hotel was across the street. You know, it was starting to get a little bit nicer, but you had this old piece of crap building that was still sitting here that was kind of running everything. So the City of Phoenix was very happy when we said, yeah, we'll take that building. That's the one we want. And we needed to expand a little bit. So we're about 5,000 square feet bigger than we were in our old building. Most of that went to additional conference rooms and things like that, because as you'll see here in a little bit, nobody has an office at DPR. We're all out on the same floor. We all sit at the same type of desks, and so you need to have places, you know, for a lot of private meetings and stuff. So most of that square footage went to add for that. Plus, you know, it give us a little bit of expansion room. So we found this one back in August of 2010. This building was many things in its life. It was a Sherwin-Williams paint store for quite a while. It was a Castle Boutique adult bookstore for a while. And he's shaking his head like he's been here before. I don't know, but so for the first year, we actually called this the DPR Boutique to kind of be, you know, a little takeoff on that. And then we got tired of that, so we stopped calling it that. But so yeah, a lot of different uses. Sat vacant for quite a while. It was really quite an eyesore. But as we'll kind of see as we get into it, the building had really good bones. It had a lot of things that really worked for us when we want to be sustainable. And so I'll explain that a little bit later. So we kind of signed off on it in October, started design January 2011. We moved in October 2011. So we went from design, construction, and actual move-in in a very, very short amount of time. So you can do that when you're a GC, and especially when you have a great partner like we had on this. Smith Group was our architectural partner on this. It's a very large architecture firm that we work with a lot, and so they really knew us, we knew them, and so it was able to kind of go from just an idea to actually being a physical object in a relatively short time because of all that. So that's what we had to start with. Really, kind of, no windows, pretty ugly. When we take off the facade, well, I will get that in a second, but kind of a before and after pictures here. You can kind of see how we transformed that building. So exterior, hell of a lot nicer, right? Interior, they were at least had a lot of ceiling fans in there, so they were trying to do something there, sustainable-wise. But then we came in and put really big-ass ceiling fans all over the place, which are way more efficient than any other kind of ceiling fan. Just really kind of transformed that space. Got rid of the whole drop ceiling that was in there, and we'll look at that in a second. Some pretty cool stuff on that. So, like I said, the idea here was to create what we call a living lab and really try and take as much as we could find sustainability-wise, put it into the building if it made sense, and then live with it for a long time so that we could now talk to you guys. So your quick estimate, probably the 4,000 to 5,000th person that's been through this building and has kind of seen what we've done over the last 5 years. And so that was really kind of the idea behind it, really to kind of experiment and see what can happen. So 2 things we really wanted to do when we came to design this. So any building, I should have started off, this is a net zero building. It was the only, I think it's still the only one in Arizona, or at least in Phoenix. So we make as much energy in the course of a year as we use in that same year. So completely net zero on energy. But any building can be net zero. You could take the most wasteful building in the world, and if you had enough solar panels or you had enough wind power or you had enough whatever, it could still be net zero, right? Kind of the wrong way to do it, though. So we really set out to kind of make this building itself as efficient energy-wise as possible, and then put in just the right amount of solar to make that work, okay? So, solar is great in a lot of ways, but solar is kind of a dirty technology. There's a lot of things that are bad in the making of solar panels. So you don't want to make a whole bunch and then put it into a wasteful building. If you can minimize the amount of solar, you minimize your cost and you minimize all that impact to the environment for actually making those solar panels. And so the crux was to get this building as efficient as possible and then go backwards and figure out what that meant as far as solar panels went. And then we also didn't want to go super crazy because we wanted to be able to teach people about this, and people aren't going to want to do stuff that has a 30, 50, 100-year payback on it. So everything we did in here had to have at least a 10-year payback or less, or we didn't do it. And so one of the things people ask us, the lights in here aren't on right now, and they won't be, but when they do come on, they're fluorescent lights. And so we get asked a lot of time, you want to be sustainable, how come you didn't do LED at the time? Well, this was over 5 years ago. LED lights were fairly expensive, a lot more expensive than they are now. And we never turn lights on, except at nighttime when there's usually not anybody here at nighttime. So if you're going to do something and then never use it, the difference in cost at that time was way over 10 years to get a payback on. These days, LEDs come down quite a bit in price. It would probably make a lot more sense. It might actually pencil out under that 10 years now, but at the time it didn't. So even though LED lights were cool and they were hip and they were sustainable at the time, it didn't really fit in with that 10-year payback. So we really didn't do that. A few other cool things we didn't do just because they didn't have a payback. Everything else did. And what's really neat is, as on an aggregate, all of the additional money that we spent that you wouldn't have spent if it was just a regular building, We're actually looking to be fully paid back on that here in a little bit less than 2 more years. So really right under a 7-year payback is what we're ending up with as an overall on the building. And so that's fantastic. So in another couple of years, this building actually starts paying us back instead of the premium that we paid to build it, which is really, really cool. All right, so I want to take you through a quick slideshow of kind of where we started and kind of walk you through the process. So again, there's the building. You take off the facade and it's even uglier. So that was kind of what we were starting with. And the interior that we kind of saw. So we took out the ceiling. Oh, I should say, I think when it became the Castle Boutique, they decided windows were not a good thing, and so they blocked in all the windows. So there were quite a bit of windows in the building at one point in time, but not when we moved in. Took a look at the ceiling. So once we got the ceiling tiles down, we found that the roof, the ceiling of the building looked like this, and so fairly well insulated. But there's something really wrong with the way that's insulated. Any of you guys know what that is? What's that? Yeah, well, it's a little deeper than that. I mean, it's good to be as tight to the roof as possible, but it's on the wrong side of the roof. Yeah, well, the real problem is you don't want to insulate below your roof unless you have no choice. You want to stop the heat from getting in the building before it ever makes it into your envelope. Okay, so we took all that down and actually put the insulation now on top of the roof and then put the roof over top of the insulation. That's the right way to insulate. So most commercial buildings are actually done that way. Houses, they don't, because it's a lot more expensive to do it that way. So typically your house has your insulation in the attic space. But if you really want to do it right, stop that heat before it gets into the envelope at all. And then it's a lot more efficient. Your insulation works a lot better.
Fiberglass, or did you use that spray foam insulation?
It was actually a rigid insulation we put on top of the roof and then covered that over with a poly roof. But yeah, it's an R40 roof we actually put in, so we did go up a little bit higher than normal on the roof just because it's Phoenix and it's freaking hot. So once we took the insulation out, we realized we had a beautiful, beautiful ceiling there without really having to do anything with it at all. So when you guys go out there and look, you'll notice we didn't touch the ceiling after we demoed all the insulation out. It really ended up being a beautiful kind of industrial look, but in a really, really cool way. So really beautiful wood trusses and such up there. So then we started cutting out where we wanted our windows. And so the intent here was to really open up this building to the outside as much as possible. And so our whole eastern elevation, our whole northern elevation, there's almost no building left, okay? But this is about the only thing we threw away on the building, was the blocks that were in the way of where we wanted the windows to go. Everything else in the building we kept. Again, trying to be as least wasteful as possible. So the floors that are in here are the original floors. We just came in and polished them so they looked a little bit nicer. Nothing else really came out of this building except for the blocks that we had to knock down to put our windows in to open it ourselves up. So you can kind of see there wasn't too much of the building left on this is the northern elevation here. Started building inside, so you guys will see kind of what these rooms look like finished here in a little bit. One of the other things that we thought about was if you're going to open yourself up to the outdoors, like we wanted to be, 44th Street in Van Buren is getting a lot nicer, but it's still 44th Street in Van Buren. You don't want to really leave yourself completely open to, to the public and to whomever's walking by. And so we started building this outdoor trellis system, atrium kind of system that goes all the way around where we are open to the outside. And we'll actually walk out there. You'll see what it's all about. But it's a way to still be, completely open to the outdoors, but still have the security of having this kind of impenetrable barrier around you. So that's kind of the start of that outdoor atrium. A little bit more on the interior. We like to build kind of crazy stuff, so you'll see a lot of our walls are not straight. We've got curved walls, we've got angled walls. A lot of really neat stuff when we walk through here in a little bit. This is our Delta room. which is an awesome looking conference room. Can take you in there in a little bit. Doesn't work worth a crap though for conferences. If you think about it, round rooms are really, really bad for sound. So every time you talk, everything you say bounces back right at you. So even though we put a lot of sound deadening material on the walls and stuff, it doesn't get used a lot for meetings. A lot of people use it by themselves because unless they talk to themselves, it's not really all that annoying. But if there's any architects in the room, round is really beautiful, not really good when it comes to functionality. All right, so let's get into some of the sustainable stuff that we did. So two of the really big things you can see in this picture. So the first one are these guys right here. And so these are called solitubes. And they provide all the light in this building unless it's nighttime or it's a really, really, really cloudy day. And just really great technology. It's a little mini skylight. You can actually connect mirrored tubes to it and move that light all throughout a building if you wanted to. Ours do just come straight down, but you can do a lot with it. So you can do multi-story and still get light in by taking these tubes down. Relatively inexpensive. The normal ones here are about $700 or so. Then the ones that are in here are about $1,300. So right now I've got these closed pretty much with a damper, but if you open up the damper, you can kind of see really how much light you can get. So that's all free light. It doesn't take any electricity. It's beautiful light too. It's sunlight, so I mean it really gives a much better tone to everything in the office. It's a lot easier on the eyes. So a lot of benefits to it, but the number one thing is it saves a tremendous amount of electricity. So lighting, even with LED lights, it takes quite a bit of electricity. So if you don't need to do that, and by the way, we're in Phoenix, we got sun 310 days out of the year, and even on the cloudy days it still works pretty well. Why not use that? Yeah.
I thought the solar tubes were narrower at the top and kind of wider out towards the bottom.
Yeah, no, they might have different styles, but ours just are the same size all the way down. So they're pretty magical. Somehow they diffuse all the heat with these domes on top, and I don't know the science behind that, but you can put your hand up to them and they're cool as anything. It's just light. All it does is bring in the light, which is just perfect. If we were doing that, we were heating up the space, that would kind of not really do much of a purpose, but all you get is just pure sunlight without the heat. And then the other big thing up here, and it really is a big thing, is this big guy right here. And this is called our solar chimney. And so we'll dig into that a little bit further here in the next few slides, but really, really, really old technology. It goes back all the way to the Anasazi Indians of 1,000 years ago. But the idea here is we built this really tall building on the top of our roof, and it can be opened to the inside of this building. And when it is open and functioning, which it's not now, it's too hot outside for our system to work, it is the second part of our passive cooling system. It's the vacuum part of our passive cooling system. That'll make more sense when I show you a few more slides. But the idea here is it's just a building that's clad in metal. This happens to be clad in zinc. Not that there's anything magic about it. It's just that one of our metal subs, Kovac, had a lot of leftover zinc from their job, so we got a really good deal on it. But it could be any kind of metal. And the sun, heats up that metal, and that space gets hot. We all know hot air rises, and so as it heats up the building, it heats up the air inside, and then that air rises. And when it does, it creates a vacuum here within the building, and that helps move the air through the building. So our building was a little bit too big to do just the passive cooling, which we'll show in a second, the shower towers. So we needed another driver to actually get that air to go all the way through the building. So we're basically, creating a weather system inside of our building. It's kind of the whole idea there. So you can kind of see the inside of the solar chimney, and down below there is the space that we're in right now. And I'll show you where it is in the building when we actually go and walk. Another view of it. So more solar tubes. You can kind of see they're kind of scattered all over the place, and so it almost looks like we didn't know what we were doing. It doesn't look really nice up there. This was a lesson learned actually from our San Diego office. So we were not the first net zero DPR office. San Diego did it the year before we did. Now, to me, that doesn't count because San Diego net zero opened some doors. You know, it's pretty freaking easy in San Diego. To do it in Phoenix, that means something. But, you know, they did go the solar tube route, and they, you know, kind of made them so they were all nicely spaced and everything. And they didn't really think about what was going to be below them. And so when they actually got their furniture in, they found that they had some desks where the light was just shining really bright right on the person. Some desks were really dark. And so it didn't work out all that well. And so what they ended up doing was they took some white fabric and they built these sails underneath the solar tubes to kind of help diffuse that light. What it does is also kind of blocks the light too. So they actually use their electric lights a lot more in San Diego than we do here. So learning from that, we set up our furniture plan first, where everything was going to be, and then we kind of figured out where the solar tubes needed to go so that they weren't, you know, either too glaring or too dark. And so by doing that, we really ended up with a, you know, a perfect, you know, kind of lighting system within the main part of the office. So if you don't do that, it might look nice on the roof, but you end up with a very unusable system down below. So this is the driver of our net zero. You got to have something to provide power. So, you know, very similar to ASU, where I think they're up to 25 megawatts or maybe a little bit more now of solar power, by using spaces that would, you know, it'd be a good place to put shade, such as all the parking garages, such as, you know, the mall on Tempe campus. And I don't know what Poly's done for solar. I haven't been out there in a while. I know we put some solar on my buildings that we built, the main campus part, but we went ahead and we used our solar to be our shade canopies for our parking. And so we get, you know, really, really good shade, and we get about 87 kW of solar power from them at their peaks. So I'm going to get on my soapbox now. I do this every time. People might disagree with me, so I'll warn you first. I'm not a huge solar fan in the way that a lot of people look at solar. I don't think that taking miles and miles of native desert and putting solar panels out there and making these big mega solar plants makes sense to me. And again, this is just my opinion. You know, you're wasting native desert, you're messing up with the wildlife, the flora, the fauna. And, you know, solar is not that efficient. It takes a lot of area to get, you know, power. But when you do like ASU does, when you do like DPR did here, and you make that solar part of where you are and it actually is serving a secondary purpose in providing shade, that is awesome. That is exactly the way solar should be used. And you're seeing it more and more. I see grocery stores now with covered parking that's made out of solar. I know the VA hospital down the street has a big area now that's, you know, covered parking that's solar. Those things make sense. The big plants to me don't. Okay, and again, I'll get off my soapbox, but that was, you know, that was Lou's 2 cents there on solar. I'd love to see, you know, solar get integrated into everything right at the source. That's really the right way to do it. So, you know, I mean, they're coming out now with, you know, roof tiles for houses that are solar tiles themselves and look like roof tiles. Still very expensive, but, you know, those are the answers. Those are the ways I think that, you know, alternative energy is going to really make sense, is when it's right at its source, right where it's being used all the time. So, and I guess, you know, with Tesla buying First or Solar City or whatever, maybe they'll figure out a way to really make that work. I hope so. You will notice we didn't. There's no motors or anything on our tiles to make them, you know, track the sun at all. So again, looking at payback, it was more than a 10-year payback to pay for the motors and the maintenance on them to do that. So we do suffer a little bit in the wintertime. We don't get as much power as we, you know, possibly could. So they're really kind of aligned to get that peak summer power. So kind of, you know, where we get the most over the course of a year is kind of where they're angled and facing to the south. All right, so we'll see all this, but this is kind of some of our finished pictures here. So you can see some of the solar tubes. You can see the big ass fans. We'll go in here. This is our fitness center. And when we go in there, I'll tell you why that's sustainable. It's even itself has a little sustainability to it. It's It's our break area. All the wood in the building, all the new wood in the building is all bamboo. So this is all bamboo. Everything else you see, this is bamboo. So anything new that we brought in was all bamboo. Bamboo is extremely sustainable. Bamboo is a grass. It makes a great product. When I saw how good it was here, I was putting floors in my house, and so I actually put bamboo flooring in my house. The dogs cannot scratch that no matter how hard they try. It's extremely hard, extremely durable. And some bamboo grows a foot a day. So you're not cutting down old growth forests or even new growth forests for that matter, to really have some beautiful, very high functioning wood type products in your building. You guys saw that when you came in. You are sitting here right now. This is a great room. We'll walk by this, and nothing really sustainable about it, but it's a really cool room, so I'd like to talk about it for a second. This is what we call our innovation room. And so it's probably the one conference room that gets the most use in the whole place. And you'll notice all the furniture in here is very soft seating. It's all on wheels. We've got bean bags in there to put your feet on. It's really cool. This glass actually opens all the way out both sides, so you have this huge open area. But the idea there was to have a spot that could be anything you wanted it to be. And so a lot of people just go in there, really, that's why I call it the innovation room, just to really sit down and talk through ideas. You can do it very comfortably. And it's a really cool idea I had never seen before until we built it here in our building. And I think it's something that a lot of people should think about. Just having that room that can be anything really makes for a really cool use of space. Another picture of our office in action. All right, so now we get to the other part of our passive cooling system, which is another one of the hearts of our sustainability. So on the right-hand side there are what we call shower towers. And you can see another picture of 3 of them there, and I think the next one, there you go. So we'll delve into them a little deeper here in a second, but this is the driver for the cooling, for our passive cooling. So the solar chimney was the second part of it. It was that vacuum that dragged the cool air as it warmed up out of the building. This is what actually makes the cool air. And so most of the year, it doesn't really work so great now. It's a little too hot outside. It doesn't work when it's humid out either. But these shower towers work by a little tiny pump, which is the only electrical part of our whole cooling system, that pumps water up to the very top of each of these towers. And there it sprays it out and it atomizes that water. And so what happens is some of that water changes state. It goes from a liquid into a gas. It evaporates. And so if anybody's in physics, they understand that change of state releases a tremendous amount of energy. And so when water goes and evaporates, a lot of energy is released. When that happens, it cools down the air that's around that water. And so cold air, just like hot air rises, cold air falls. And so by cooling that air down, it just naturally falls. It's heavier now. And so it falls down these shower towers and then goes out into the bottom of our building, and we'll show you that as we walk through, and creates really a beautiful, nice, cool air without any power other than the little micro horsepower pumps that actually pump the water up to the top. So we're able to, without a fan, without any mechanical cooling at all, keep this office cool for most times of the year, just using a tiny bit of electricity for the pump and a little bit of water that evaporates. And it really works very well. This is what I grew up with. I'm a native, so nobody really had air conditioning when I was a kid. Everybody had evaporative coolers on their house. And some people still do, and they're great. They use very little electricity. But they still have a fan. We don't even have a fan. I mean, it's all natural just from that air falling and then the air rising on the other side. Make sense? Yeah.
So is there puddling of water in the bottom? And if so, how do you get rid of that?
So we did have a little bit of an issue at the very beginning where some of the little water droplets stayed entrained in the air, and so they actually blew out into the space, and so we were getting our carpet wet. So it took us 3 or 4 iterations to find what they call drift eliminators that really worked to kind of trap that water on the inside, so all we got was the air going through. So yeah, there's a sump at the bottom that, where the water that doesn't evaporate falls down, the water that's in the air falls down. So we don't, we're not always just blowing water out. I mean, most of it does get reused, but it doesn't come into the building anymore. It was a lesson learned. It took us a little while to really get that nailed down to where we weren't getting that mist coming in and we're getting the carpet all wet.
What's the water usage on that? Like, like how much are they recycling? Because I know you atomize it, you lose some evaporation.
Yeah, so I mean, it works about like like a cooling tower that you have, at a chiller plant, and typically 2 to 3% of the water is going to evaporate to cool that down. I don't know what our water use is, over the year. We don't have a separate meter on that compared to what's on the bathroom and stuff. It's, it's a decent amount of water. I mean, probably in the couple thousand gallons a year kind of stuff. But, for what, most HVAC takes, water and evaporates water into the space. Actually everything, because power plants, you see the big cooling towers with the clouds coming out, especially when it's humid out. That's all water that's evaporating in the space. There's, hundreds of millions of gallons a day that gets evaporated here in Phoenix just to make the electricity to run the city. So, all right, so these are some of the things we kind of looked at. So I wanted to point one thing out. So this building actually was perfect in another way, and it was perfect in its orientation. So it really would have only worked on this corner for what we wanted to do. You really don't want to open up your southern elevations to the sun. You really don't want to open up your western elevations to the sun. That makes things really bad. So this building being on this particular corner, our southern and our western elevations, we didn't do anything with. We put a coat of paint on the outside. That was it. So they were, masonry construction. Masonry is very good, actually. It works as a heat sink. So, it kind of will store up heat during the day and then kind of release it out at night. So other than, we put a little more insulation in the walls here, but didn't touch that. The eastern side, is not the best elevation to open up, but it's not bad. You only get that morning sun in there. And we put a lot of shade covering over it so we don't get a whole lot of heat coming in even from the eastern side. And then the north side, any building, open that up as much as you want. It's never really going to see, that direct sunlight. And so for us, the building was perfect for that. We're able to open up and have our front door be right where we want it to be. So you can think about it on any other corner here, can't really do it quite the way we wanted to. All right, so these are some early sketches of the system. So this gives you kind of a good idea of the shower towers. So, kind of blowing up, the air cools down here, falls down here, comes into the space. And it's got a pretty decent velocity, but not enough to get it all the way to the other side of the space. And so that's why they came up with the solar chimney also. So the air is kind of slowing down as it comes across. It's obviously heating up a little bit because it's picking up heat. And then the suction from this kind of takes it over and then gets that warmer air now that it's kind of gone through the building and cooled the building down back out of the building where we didn't want it anymore. And so this kind of just runs itself all the time when it's, when the weather's what we need it to be for it to work all that well.
So it's not as effective,
It doesn't work at all on humid days. I mean, and being a native again, when the monsoons hit and all you had was a swamp cooler, life was kind of hell. It was not good. So you can only cool air down to within 3 or 4 degrees of whatever the dew point is. And so when your dew point is at 65 or 68, you can only maybe get 70, 72 degree air. And when it's, hot and humid, that doesn't really cool anybody down. Most of the air that comes out of AC systems is around 50, 52 degrees. So, it takes fairly cold air. So we need to get at least, 60 degree air or so. So when the dew points are there or when it's just too hot outside, the air is not going to have a chance to cool down enough, then the system doesn't work. And when that happens, then we're on, typical, what's called direct expansion air conditioning or, typical AC kind of units. We did go in with variable compressor units, which are, a lot more efficient. We're probably about 20 tons lower on cooling in the building than we should be if this was a typical office only operating on AC. So, the temperatures are warm. The conference rooms all have air conditioning in them because they can't really use the system because we have walls that block the air. But in the main part of the office, it does get a little warm. We keep it around 82 degrees or so. That's not comfortable for most people in an office. That's where the big-ass fans come in. I do the same exact thing at home. I keep my house at 82 degrees, always. And I sit underneath my ceiling fan. I'm perfectly comfortable. So by putting the big-ass fans in, you can have a much higher temperature and still be very, very comfortable. And so that was kind of the, kind of has to go hand in hand there. If it was just 83 in here with no air movement, life would suck. But when you do that, it works out really well. So these are just some different models that were done. Weren't really sure this would work, so we modeled it on a computer about 1,000 different ways to make sure it would before we invested all that money in it. And the computer was right. Everything kind of worked really well on it. So just another little kind of idea of what the solar chimney looks like. It's kind of even cooler when you see it, so we'll look at that in a little bit. Another picture of it. And then a really good picture of the shower towers. So we didn't go with the cellulose pads that it shows in this thing. We actually have, like I said, spray nozzles that actually atomize the air. It's a little more efficient. But that was the original one. And you kind of see where the whole idea that the air comes in, hits where the water's evaporating, which cools it down, and then it just falls. So it's really just gravity that drives the air through the building. All right. So I think I hit on pretty much everything. I didn't talk too much about the planting. I'm proud finally after the 5th year we've been here, the vines are actually starting to grow in like they were supposed to a long time ago. But our whole outside on the east and north where we open up to the outside is covered in vines. And it's not just for privacy, it's not just because they look pretty. It's also to help filter the air that comes in. So one thing I didn't talk about is our operable windows. So all the windows on the east and the north are actually on individual actuators. And so when it's nicer outside than it is inside, they actually open up automatically. So when you do that, now you're opening up and you get all the dust and everything else from outside. So the vines, one of their big things is to actually help filter that air. Still haven't got where we'd like them to be, but they're looking better than they ever have. So maybe one of these days we'll actually have a full-blown ivy-covered front here and really get the full benefit of that filtration. All right, so a few lessons learned. So, talked a little bit about a couple things. It's, a little uncomfortable at 83 degrees or 82 degrees in the summertime, so people have to get used to that. Wintertime is actually worse. We don't heat the building very much, and so you see a lot of people typing with gloves on their fingers and stuff. Obviously, bringing in your own portable space heater would go completely against the idea of being net zero, so those aren't allowed. So you've got to put up a little bit more. And those are the things that, when I talk to people, especially, people that are used to a normal office or whatever, some of these things don't really work for them because, they're not going to put up with 82 degrees. They're not going to put up with 65 degrees in the wintertime. They're not going to put up with, a lot of things. But if you can, this will work. And we're seeing, actually, took a guy from Intel through here about 6 months ago, and they were looking at our whole passive system for more of their warehouse kind of things, which really makes sense. So it doesn't have to be just for an office, but we're a little wacky. We started off in Redwood City, California, so we think a little more hippie than most people do. But one of the things we learned was big-ass fans move a lot of air. And so we still use a lot of paper. We try to be, everybody says they're paperless. Not so. So if you owned a paperweight company, you made a lot of money off us in the first week or two. All the girls in here decided they get these really big-ass gems, so you'll see those all over the office. That's kind of a pain. That's hard to live with, when you're wanting to do stuff with paper and the fans blowing on you and blowing your papers around. Another thing you have to kind of learn to live with a little bit. Another thing we found out really quick was the idea of dust. We had all our windows open automatically because it was nice outside one day, and a really big haboob came through and basically turned the inside of our office into the desert that was outside. So we learned from that, and now our building management system is actually hooked into the same weather alert system that you get on your phone that tells you when storms are coming. And so when it gets alerted to that, the windows go shut even if they wanted to be open. So we got an override on that. We do have, a lady that comes in every single morning and, kind of dusts out the office and stuff because, it does get a little dustier than a completely sealed in office. That's another thing you have to put up with. And that adds a little bit of cost, into that payback. You got to pay somebody, if you want your place to look nice all the time, to be doing a little bit more dusting. You open yourself up to the outside's coming in. But I'm proud to announce this was our first year, and we've done it every year since. So our very first year, after 365 days, we consumed about 130,000 kWh of power, and we made about 143,000 kWh. So perfect. Not really. We didn't really want to have that big of a spread. We're not trying to be good guys and create electricity for other people. We really want to be just us. That's the idea. And so looking at that, the next year we were able to take our thermostat down about a degree. And so the next year that split wasn't 13,000 kWh, it was about 8,000 kWh. And over the years, we've kind of tried to get those two to be about as close as possible without really risking, not having a net zero year. That would kind of suck if that happened. But the idea here was, to again, this building net zero, not produce power for everybody else. Get this building as efficient as possible. Figure out what the minimum amount of solar it takes to power that very efficient building could be, and then see where it went. And that's kind of what we did. Questions? Yeah.
Did you follow any kind of building standard, like building challenge or some of the net zero sustainability buildings?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, I think we did get a pretty good award in the Living Building Challenge. We are LEED Platinum. We have all that going, but that wasn't the reason why we did any of this stuff. We kind of, Smith Group's a pretty cutting edge architect. We're a very cutting edge construction company, and so kind of putting our heads together, we kind of were able to come up with most of these things, on our own. And other than the solar chimney and the shower towers, most of the stuff has been used before. So those were probably the really radical ideas that nobody, at least that we knew of, had done before. Everything else, now, putting big ass fans inside, not that common, but now they have these 8-foot diameter ones, it is getting a lot more common. When I built ASU Poly, that was the first time I was ever introduced to a big ass fan, and those in the atrium there, those are 20-foot diameter fans. Those are big mamas. So these are quite a bit smaller. I will show you, we do have a couple small big ass fans that are actually designed now for the house, and they actually have a different name. They're called Haiku. And so I have 2 in my house now because they're just brilliant, just the most brilliant engineered fan you've ever seen. So we actually have 2 in here too, and I'll show you them. Little pricey. I don't spend much money on toys and other things. Every once in a while I want to get something nice for the house. So got the first one, got the second one about 6 months ago, and everything is controlled off my phone. So I can control, fan speed, lights, has all kinds of different settings to make it like a windy day and kind of oscillate that way, all kinds of stuff. And it's just a brilliant, brilliant fan. By the same company, but they've downsized them a little bit and made them look, a little less industrial for home use too. So, yeah.
You mentioned that these are efficient fans.
Extremely efficient.
Can you explain that a little bit more? Is it
Yeah.
because of the variable speed controls?
Well, yeah, everything is on VFDs. This particular one is a manual VFD, but the ones in our office are actually controlled off temperature, so that is part of it. But really, big ass fans started their lives making fans for feedlots, for cattle. And so, the cattle people want as much as they can get for as little money as possible. So that was their whole purpose, was to come up with a fan that could move a lot of air without using a lot of electricity. So, most of the secret is actually in the pitch and the design of the blades. They're very, very efficient. Blade design is the main reason behind it. We do have these on VFDs so that they don't have to be running at full speed all the time if they don't need to be. That's almost more for comfort than anything else. But yeah, most everything is just because it's I heard they're about 90% less electricity use than a normal fan, so extremely more efficient. I don't know if that number is exactly right, but that's what I've heard. So.
Is it anything to do with the motor design or mostly the pitch?
Yeah, they better have really good, for what we pay for them, they better have really good motors in them. And I don't know, if there's not just the fact that they're stronger or better motors, if they are, but I'm sure they are more efficient too. So.
Could you explain a little bit to the students about the concept of variable speed compressors, variable speed motors, and why that is an energy saving?
Yeah. So to not get super technical, but there's a thing called the fan law, which says that with speed doubles, your power actually goes up by the cube of that. So it goes up by 8 times. So if you don't need your fan running as fast, why have it run there all the time? So people came up with what are called variable frequency drives or variable speed drives, same thing, where it can adjust the speed by changing the frequency of the electricity that goes to it. And so if you cut your speed down by half, you lower your power usage by 8 times, by the cube of 2. So it's used everywhere now. VFDs are, they're all computer now. They're very small. They're relatively inexpensive. Quick payback on them. So almost any air handler now is going to be on a variable frequency drive. To put them on fans, at my house, it's me pushing a button and turning it up or down. But here, we don't want to be doing that. Nobody's going to do that. So it's, the building management system does
So
it.
there's like a thermocouple or something that measures the ambient air temperature and then it adjusts, or you have to?
Yeah, the thermostat, a thermistor, if you would. That adjusts, and then that tells the fan. So you'll see, right now it's fairly warm in here, so almost all our fans are going about at the same speed, but there are a lot of times where you'll see one going fairly quickly and a few others very slow because that particular part's a little warmer over there. So fans don't cool anything down, don't get me wrong. The fan just works really because we're human and we sweat. So again, we're like shower towers. The fan helps move that air over you, and it helps release the heat away from your body, and also helps the sweat on you evaporate better. So that's all a fan does. Never leave a fan on in a room if you're not in it. You're just wasting electricity at that point. Lose sustainable tip number 1. Other questions? Okay, we'll go take a look at the office, but I want to show you just a couple other little things real quick. So we did, sustainability for us was not just, energy. I talked about how we reused the building as much as we could. But then we also banned plastic water bottles, or at least disposable plastic water bottles. So everywhere around our office we have filtered water units, and then we use glasses that can be washed and reused and reused and reused. So we do have this hellishly cool open house once a year in November that everybody attends because it's the best contractor party in the world. And at that time there is bottled water, but that's the only time you ever see bottled water in this office. So, and this is not sustainable, but I think it's really cool. This is a teaching area. This is our class. So a lot of classes that we do are going to be during lunchtime. And so typically, you bring lunch in, and in the class, if they're bringing the lunch in, everybody's like not paying attention to the class. They're looking at the lunch and getting ready to eat. So I don't know who came up with this, but it's awesome as hell. We actually put this servery here, and so they can bring the lunch in here, and it's hidden. Nobody knows what's going on. And then when it is lunchtime, you just peel this back, and then everybody can, eat, and it doesn't disturb the class. So it's just good design. It's not sustainable. So all right. So everybody wants to get up, follow me. I'll show you the office itself. A few other things I didn't talk about on the slideshow. Because there's a few cool little things here that we didn't talk about. Number one is this guy right here. This is what we call our vampire switch. And so super cheap, cool way to save a little bit of energy. So I think, most people have heard of vampire power. When you leave your chargers plugged in, you leave your monitors on. They take just a little bit of power. But when you multiply a little bit of power over a bunch of people in an office overnight, that can become a relatively large amount of power. And so we did something very, very simple. We took one electrical panel and made it all of the non-critical power in the building. So everything that isn't IT or a refrigerator or anything like that is on this panel. And that panel has a relay in it. And that relay is connected to this button. And so the very last person out every night, they set the alarm and then they push the vampire switch and it kills all power to that panel. So if people left their monitors on, if they left their chargers in, doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't get power. It saves a couple 3 kW every night. Over the course of a year, that really starts to add up a little bit. And when you're doing it, especially in a building that you're just building, it's very, very inexpensive to do. There's a lot of similar things out on the market now, vampire power strips and things like that. Your payback on those is going to take you frickin' forever because it really isn't that much power, and they cost maybe $100 for a power strip. But when you can do it, holistically all at once with one panel with a $35 relay, it makes sense in that case. So I said all of our windows are operated. So all these are our actuators. So every single window, all 82 windows in here have these actuators on them. So again, when it's nicer outside than it is inside, they just automatically open up. If you can imagine 82 of these going off at the same time, extremely loud. For about 5 seconds, it sounds like the biggest hive of bees you've ever heard in your life. Takes a little bit of getting used to. Again, a lot of these things, there's compromises, there's things you have to get used to. But it's wonderful, especially it's nice outside, you get a nice breeze going in. Again, just so most of us do at our houses, we open up the front door when it's nice outside. This is our way to do it automatically. And then we keep track, obviously. And you can actually go to DPR.com and then search through for our net zero offices. So we have 4 net zero offices now, and they all have dashboards. And so this is ours. I forgot to point out, I usually do on that last slide where I show our first year. Summertime, we kind of get killed, obviously. So we make a lot of power. 342 kWh is about the peak. Sometimes we'll get around 400 in a day. But we use a lot too, because obviously it's a lot hotter. So we use more power than we make in the summertime. Oddly enough, in the wintertime, we use more power than we make. That's because in the wintertime, we don't make very much power. The sun's very low in the south, and we don't get a whole lot. We might get 125 kWh off the panels in the wintertime. So, but in those shoulder months, the March, April, May, and then the October, November, part of December, that's where we make a lot more power than we use. And that's really kind of the key to having this be a net zero kind of year. So we don't make the power we make goes out on the grid, and then we pull power back off the grid. So we're not storing our power, we're not doing anything like that. But over the course of that year, we've put more back on the grid than we've pulled off of the grid. Okay. So that's one of those haiku fans I talked about, this black fan right above your head here. So you can see how beautiful they are.
How do you spell that?
H-A-I-K-U, just like a Japanese poem.
Just like that.
So they're kind of funny. They're so well designed. When I got the first one, being a guy, I didn't even bother with the directions. I just started putting it together. And I went and turned it on, and it was all wobbly. And I'm like, this is a bunch of crap. And so then I got the directions out, and I said, oh, you have to put the blade with the red sticker on the red part of the motor and the blade with the yellow sticker on the yellow. So I took it back down, did all that, put it back up, and it ran perfectly. Perfectly balanced, never moves, kicks out a tremendous amount of air for very little electricity. So, and then, like I say, my new one I can control with my phone, which is really cool.
See the solar tubes are really pumping out the light too.
Yeah, like I say, we hardly ever have lights on. Now there's light sensors in here that automatically turn the lights on, so we don't have to go, oh, it's dark, and go flip a switch. It is all automatic.
Is bamboo woodwork.
Yeah, so this is all bamboo.
How about that panel where the TV is at?
That's Venetian plaster, actually. So, I will point out,
Stuff that's gonna be compatible with a LEED platinum type of building. You said you're LEED platinum.
yeah, and we can prove it right here. This is our LEED Platinum plaque that we got. So we wanted to, it's not the main reason we did it, but we were very proud of it, so we put it, right there. And then a whole bunch of different awards we got for the buildings and stuff throughout here. So. So I said all the wood in the building is bamboo. That's not really quite true. All of the desks, all the furniture that you see here, that table, all of our other conference room tables, those we had built back in 1996. And they were built very, very well. They were still very functional. And so instead of throwing very, very usable furniture away, again, want to be sustainable, we found a way to put it back into this building here. So what isn't striped in bamboo is actually 20-year-old furniture that we brought over from our old office because it was still in perfectly good shape. So again, sustainability is not throwing stuff away when you don't need to also. It's not just about energy. So all DPR offices, since we started in 1990, are the same. They've got two things that they have to have. Number one is a fully open office. There can be no closed door offices. There's really no cubes. Everybody sits, in the same kind of spot. So the regional manager, his, desk is over there, same exact as our accountant, same exact as everybody else. It's partially because, we're a little hippie of a company, but partially because it really makes for great coordination of people and stuff. It's hard for people when they come out of an office environment to come here, and it takes them a while to get used to it because it's all this noise and everything. But when you're doing your work, you can kind of drone it out, but you're hearing what's going on around you, and it happens all the time. You know the answer to what two people are talking about, and you hear it subliminally, and you stop what you're doing, and you help them out. And so for collaboration, nothing matches the open office. Having the open office is the only way that our passive cooling system will work, though. So you can kind of see the black tubes that are on the outside there. That's where the cool air comes in. It sweeps across here, and then we'll get over to this solar chimney here in a second, makes its way and goes back up into the solar chimney. So obviously none of that works if you have big tall cubes, if you have closed door offices and such. So that's why this system doesn't work for everybody that comes in here and visits our office. But if you have this kind of opening, this kind of open office, then it works really well. The other thing every DPR office has to have is a wine bar. And so this is our wine bar here. We do a lot of studs and drywall, so we actually filled it full here at the top with drywall screws to kind of be a little bit of a pay on to what we do with drywall. Hell of a lot bigger than our old one, and gets a lot of uses. We do a lot of impromptu meetings here. That's why we have a screen there. We have about every couple months, everybody will gather up here for what we call the brag bar. But very wine-centric company, and so the wine bar is very much something that has to be part of what we do. So now you'll notice all of our conference rooms are all full glass. And so the intent there again is to what's on the outside, we want to bring that outside as far as we can into the building. And so there's a lot of lead points for how much daylight you get in the building. We're at almost 97% of our space here has a view of daylight. And it maxes out in LEED at 75%, so hitting 97 is amazing. We just have a couple little back offices, and they even see sunlight because they got solar tubes in them, so, but I don't think we counted that. Again, that makes for rather distracting meetings at times, if you're trying to hold a meeting and you see people walking by and everybody's waving and all this stuff, but, another one of those compromises you have to do to really get the building that you want. So if we walk over this way, this is the Delta room I was talking about, by the way, so. Even with the sound panels on there, it's still very echoey in there. It's kind of strange. But if you look up here, you'll see our solar chimney. And so all these dampers along here, when the system is running, when our passive cooling system is running, those dampers would be open. And the sun would be heating up that outside building, making the air up there hot, making that air rise and leave the building. And as it does that, it creates a vacuum that draws the air that's coming from the shower towers and coming over here, draws it back up and then outside, because now that air is hotter than we want it to be. So you kind of put those two together, and that's our passive cooling system. So this is that innovation room I talked about. So I really, I think it's cool with the doors that open fully, but you can kind of see it's really a great space where, it really has this comfortable furniture that can be moved out anywhere you want. So we do have one room, and one room only in the building, that doesn't have a solar tube. And I won't take you there, but it's this little room right here on the side, what we call our Zen room. And so it's also a lactation room and things like that, but it's a place that if you just get completely stressed out, you can go take a break in there. The solar tubes can go fairly dark, but what you saw in there was about as dark as they can go. So we didn't put one in that room. It only has electric lights, so if you really want to chill out, you can turn all the lights off and be dark. But every other room in here, our storage rooms, our cabinet rooms, everything, they're all lit by solar tubes except for that one room. Even the file room, that's a solar tube in there. So while we were designing what we wanted here, we kind of did a survey with all the employees and said, what would you like to see in the building? And number one answer came back, a fitness center. And so we put in a fairly nice one here. It does get a lot of use, actually. And Fridays, everybody's going home, but most of the time during this time of day, there would be people in here. So we've got showers over there, women's and men's, and so you can come in before work and work out or after work. And so I said there's something a little bit sustainable about doing this even. And it's a stretch, but it's true. We always promote healthy lifestyles and such, and so there was a time that we would pay, part or all of your gym membership if you wanted to go to a gym. But what typically happens is you're going to go home, you're going to change clothes, and then you're going to get back in your car and you're going to go drive back over to your gym. And so by putting your gym where you are, it saves that little bit of driving. And so if you're looking at 10, 15, 20 people 3 times a week over the course of many, many years, that's a considerable amount of fuel savings and such. And so, even little things like putting a fitness center in add a little bit more sustainability to what you're doing as a company with your buildings. All right. Yeah. So we had a really cool construction day yesterday for about 100 first through 8th graders, and so that's what all this crap is. It's usually not this messy here, but over there is kind of the magic of the solar. Actually, if you can come out and close the door, that'd be cool. Yeah. That's where the DC power from all the solar panels actually goes into the inverter over there and gets turned into AC power. And so everything there in that big box then goes back into the system, goes back onto the grid. I'm sure we get some of our own electrons back. For the most part, they're probably new electrons that came from somewhere else. But again, the intent is produce more over that year than you use.
Before we move away, can the
Yeah.
cameraman get a close-up shot of that?
Yeah, if you want to get around the crop there. So usually I walk over there, but I didn't want to bring everybody through all that.
That's about all it is, that's just the inverter, there's no
Yeah.
other gadgets that go with it?
Nope.
What are those pumps, are those like for the water, solar tubes?
No, we actually used to have a mister system, and we took it out because it never got used. So.
You mentioned that you don't store your solar.
Right.
Now with that technology, with those Tesla batteries, that's what you guys put.
Again, probably not. And again, just like trying to reduce the amount of solar panels we had, batteries are even worse to build than solar panels are as far as, the pollution and stuff that they cause. So if you don't need to, why do it? Plus, there's a tremendous cost to them. The payback on them is going to be quite a while. APS, they don't like it as much as they used to, because they've got to pay for, all the grid. And we don't mind. We're using their system. You might as well, we'll pay our fair share on that. I think APS in the last year or two has gone a little bit overboard on that. Again, lose soapbox. But, if it's there, use it. I mean, again, why create more stuff if you already have something in place that works just fine? So.
Is this the same type of trellis work that we have at the Polytechnic campus buildings?
Similar, yeah. I think we might have actually very similar. I wish we'd put the same vines that are on the west building on this building, because that thing they've overtaken that building. I think we have the vines that are on the east buildings that we planted here for some reason, and this is 5 years worth. Still not quite where we want it, but they've never looked better. So you're seeing.
Also provides more shading of the building itself, too.
Yeah, a little bit of shade.
Shading of the filtration of air and the damping of sounds from the road.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of benefits to it. So this is the shower tower. So this is our driver for our passive cooling system. And so you see, very, very simple. This is just SDR35 plastic pipe. It's what you use to, put in storm drain systems and such underneath freeways and everything. Cheap, looks cool, kind of speaks to construction. I mean, it could be anything, that's round, but we used it. And so there's a little pump down here in the sump in all four of these, and it just pumps water all the way up to the top, sprays that water out, and like we said, the hot air now cools down, and that air just falls down, and it goes through and out through these two ducts that you see on each side here, and then into the building. And so that's what provides that cool air as part of the passive cooling system.
You have rainwater harvesting?
We don't. We didn't really do anything with water. It's a fairly xeriscaped kind of place, but again, payback kind of stuff, and those are the things that tend to kill most of the rainwater or condensate or any of those things. That every job I've been on with ASU always started out with rainwater harvesting, condensate harvesting, and it just couldn't pencil out. And so again, looking at that 10-year payback.
Yeah, water is just so cheap.
It is, yeah.
Payback period is not there. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't consider it.
Yeah. So, I mean, Jones Studio, one of the architects I'm working with now, they just built their own place in Tempe. Oh, okay. They do have a rainwater harvesting system that they use there. And they'll probably end up getting maybe, a couple thousand gallons in the whole year off of it. But they use it for their plants and stuff. So yeah, we didn't do gray water. We didn't do any of that
So
either.
you guys built there, that space?
No, they wish we had because they were about a year late getting in. But no, they went with some bunch of guys in their pickup trucks. So.
These vines are low water use? What's the
Relatively low, yeah. I couldn't tell you what type they are. I don't know crap about plants, but
This looks like
yeah.
bamboo to me.
yeah, I couldn't even tell you that. I know what a mesquite tree looks like and a palo verde, and that's about it. All right, so that's pretty much my show. You guys have any other questions?
You guys don't do any type of like energy storage?
Any what?
Energy storage?
No, I'm sorry, maybe you missed my little talk out there. Yeah, so, you know, a big, yeah, no, I can, it's very simple. So we already have this power grid in place. For us to do energy storage, that would mean, you know, paying for a lot of money for batteries, which we don't like. Batteries are very, very dirty to make. That's one of the kind of bad things about them. I mean, you know, I know a couple people I heard drive Priuses here. Kind of a nasty car when it comes to its impact in a lot of ways, you know, especially for the lithium batteries. Still great to use, don't get me wrong, but you know, so if you already have this grid in place, why spend the money? Why spend all the pollution to make those batteries? You know, it just doesn't make sense. You know, if we were out in the middle of nowhere and we want net zero, you know, then it makes sense. But you know, APS just happens to have a grid here, so you might as well use it, right? And pay them for it. We have no problem with that. I mean, there's definitely should be paying some money for that.
Would it be acceptable for the group to walk into the office space to experience what it might be like to
Absolutely.
have to work in that
Yeah.
office space?